The year is 2025. The global economy, still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and grappling with geopolitical tensions, faces a new threat: soaring oil prices. This time, the culprit is not a war or a natural disaster, but a calculated move by OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, to reassert its dominance in the global energy market. OPEC's strategy is simple: tighten oil supply, drive up prices, and remind the world who controls the taps. This is not the first time OPEC has played this game. In the 1970s, the oil embargo imposed by Arab members of OPEC sent shockwaves through the global economy, leading to fuel shortages, soaring prices, and a recession in many Western countries. The lesson was clear: control of oil translates into immense geopolitical power. For decades, OPEC has wielded this power, often to the detriment of oil-importing nations. OPEC's latest move comes at a time when the world is struggling to transition to cleaner sources of energy. The urgency of climate change has led to a global push for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and energy efficiency measures. Yet, the world remains heavily reliant on oil, which fuels our cars, powers our industries, and heats our homes. This dependence gives OPEC enormous leverage, and they are not afraid to use it. In recent years, the United States, once heavily reliant on oil imports, has emerged as a major oil producer thanks to the shale oil revolution. Using hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling techniques, American companies have unlocked vast reserves of oil and gas trapped in shale formations. This boom in domestic production has reduced U.S. dependence on foreign oil and even turned the country into a net exporter of energy. However, this newfound energy independence has proven to be more fragile than it appeared. The U.S. shale industry is highly sensitive to oil prices. When prices are high, production surges as companies rush to cash in. But when prices drop, as they did during the COVID-19 pandemic, many shale producers struggle to break even. This volatility makes it difficult for the U.S. to act as a counterweight to OPEC's market manipulation. Moreover, much of the infrastructure in the U.S., such as refineries and pipelines, is designed for heavier crude oil, primarily sourced from OPEC countries. American shale oil, on the other hand, is lighter and requires different processing. While some refineries have made modifications to handle shale oil, it is an expensive and time-consuming process. This limits the ability of the U.S. to quickly ramp up domestic production in response to OPEC's actions. Not quite. OPEC is not a monolithic entity. Its 13 member countries spanning the Middle East, Africa, and South America have diverse interests and often find themselves at odds. Saudi Arabia, the de facto leader of OPEC and the world's largest oil exporter, has historically pursued a more moderate approach, seeking to balance its own interests with the need for stable global oil markets. Other members, such as Iran and Venezuela, have been more hawkish, pushing for higher prices and using oil as a political weapon. Despite these internal divisions, OPEC members are united in their desire to counter the growing influence of the United States in the global energy market. The rise of U.S. shale production has challenged OPEC's long-held dominance, and many members see the current situation as an opportunity to reassert their control. This shared goal has led to a rare display of unity within OPEC, as even traditional rivals have put aside their differences to present a united front against the U.S. This newfound unity is bad news for oil-importing nations, as it strengthens OPEC's ability to act in concert and manipulate global oil prices. The message is clear: OPEC is back in the driver's seat, and the world will have to adjust to a new era of oil price volatility. The impact of OPEC's actions is being felt around the world, as oil-importing countries grapple with soaring energy costs and the threat of fuel shortages. Developing countries, many of which rely heavily on imported oil for transportation, electricity generation, and industrial production, are particularly vulnerable. Rising oil prices exacerbate existing economic challenges, fueling inflation, increasing the cost of living, and hindering economic growth. In India, the world's third-largest oil importer, the government is struggling to contain the impact of rising oil prices on its economy. The Indian rupee has weakened against the US dollar, making oil imports even more expensive. The government has been forced to cut taxes on fuel and provide subsidies to shield consumers from the full brunt of the price hikes, but these measures are putting a strain on government finances. China, the world's largest oil importer, is also feeling the pinch. The country's economic growth, while still robust, has slowed in recent years, and rising oil prices are adding to the headwinds. The Chinese government has been tapping into its strategic petroleum reserves to help meet domestic demand and stabilize prices, but these reserves are finite and cannot offset the impact of OPEC's actions indefinitely. Section 5. The price we pay. Higher oil prices impact national economies and ordinary citizens alike. Families face rising costs for gasoline, heating oil, groceries, and consumer goods. Many struggle with stagnant wages and increased living costs. U.S. gas prices have surpassed $5 per gallon. This level hasn't been seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Household budgets are strained, forcing spending cuts. Families dip into savings or cut back on spending. Low-income families are hit particularly hard. Rising transportation costs drive up prices of essentials. Food, clothing, and other goods become more expensive. Truck drivers face higher operating costs. These costs are passed on to consumers. The agricultural sector is also affected. Farmers face higher costs for fuel and fertilizer. This drives up food production costs. Section 6. OPEC's Endgame. OPEC's current strategy is not simply about short-term profits. It is part of a long-term plan to maintain control of the global oil market and ensure the cartel's relevance in a world that is increasingly moving towards cleaner sources of energy. OPEC knows that the transition to a low-carbon economy is inevitable, but they are determined to manage that transition on their own terms. To achieve this goal, OPEC members are pursuing a two-pronged strategy. First, they are investing heavily in expanding their own oil production capacity. Saudi Arabia, for example, is investing billions of dollars in developing new oil fields and increasing its refining capacity. The goal is to ensure that OPEC has the ability to meet global oil demand even as other producers, such as the United States, see their output decline. Second, OPEC is seeking to strengthen its relationships with key oil-consuming nations, particularly in Asia. China and India, with their rapidly growing economies and insatiable thirst for energy, are seen as particularly important partners. OPEC is offering these countries long-term oil supply contracts and other incentives in a bid to secure their loyalty and reduce their reliance on other suppliers, such as the United States. Section 7. Between a rock and a hard place. The Biden administration finds itself in a difficult position as it grapples with the fallout from OPEC's actions. On the one hand, the administration is under intense pressure to bring down energy prices, which are contributing to inflation and eroding consumer confidence. On the other hand, the administration is committed to addressing climate change and reducing the country's reliance on fossil fuels, which means transitioning away from oil, not doubling down on it. In the short term, the administration has limited options. It has released oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, but these releases are temporary and have had only a modest impact on prices. The administration has also called on domestic oil producers to increase production, but many companies are reluctant to make significant investments in new drilling, given the uncertainty surrounding future oil prices and the Biden administration's long-term commitment to renewable energy. The administration is also facing calls to ease sanctions on Venezuela, a major oil producer that has been under U.S. sanctions since 2019. However, such a move would be politically controversial, as it would be seen as rewarding a repressive regime. Moreover, it is unclear how much oil Venezuela could realistically produce in the short term, given the country's economic and political turmoil. Section 8. Green shoots in a desert of dependence. The current energy crisis has highlighted the urgent need to transition to a more sustainable energy system that is less reliant on fossil fuels and more resilient to geopolitical shocks. While the world has made some progress in recent years in developing renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power, these sources still account for a relatively small share of global energy consumption. The good news is that the cost of renewable energy has fallen dramatically in recent years, making it increasingly competitive with fossil fuels. Solar and wind power are now the cheapest forms of electricity generation in many parts of the world, and the cost of batteries, which are essential for storing renewable energy, is also declining rapidly. This is leading to a surge in investment in renewable energy projects around the world. However, the transition to a clean energy economy will not happen overnight. It will require massive investments in new infrastructure, including renewable energy generation, transmission lines, and energy storage. It will also require a fundamental shift in consumer behavior as we move away from gas-guzzling vehicles and energy-inefficient homes and businesses. Section 9. An uncertain future. The standoff between OPEC and the US has created uncertainty in the global oil market. It is unclear how long this will last or what the outcome will be. The world is entering a new era of energy geopolitics. Several scenarios could unfold, from prolonged standoff to rapid clean energy transition. Only time will tell which path we will take.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.